Last week we talked about Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. And the reason why that was so inflammatory was that it kind of pointed to the fact that Jesus is God. That God is three persons, but yet one God. This week we're going to just skip over chapter 12, because in chapter 12 it continues the controversy of raising Lazarus from the dead. Things are just getting worse. But we want to skip to John chapter 13. Because in John chapter 13, Jesus has realized that this is his last night on the face of the planet. I want to ask you a question. If you knew it was your last night on the face of the planet, and you were surrounded by those who love you, what would you say to them? I mean, these are the people that are going to carry on your legacy. What would you say to them? I want you just to imagine, man, the gravity of that. And Jesus is dealing with the gravity of that reality, but he's also dealing with the gravity of the fact that his mission is going to save all of humanity. And so this is an important chapter, and Jesus, you can almost feel the weight of that. And what I want you to ask in your small groups is this question: what does Jesus expect from those who follow him? What exactly is it that Jesus expects from those who follow him? As you go through, you'll see that Jesus washes his disciples' feet. Now, one of the things in ancient times, your feet would just get really nasty. You know, you could be completely clean, but you would walk around in sandals, and the streets weren't necessarily paved, and they had a lot of animals, and so man, a lot of times you'd be stepping in animal dung and dirt and everything. And so one of the things that was customary is that somebody would need to wash the feet of the guests in the house. And mainly that was done by somebody who was this lowly servant. It was like the low of the low job to do. When the disciples were all gathered around, Jesus took it upon himself to take off his outer jacket. And he got on his knees and he began to wash the disciples' feet. You'll see that Peter's going, there's no way. I mean, you're above me. There's no way I'm going to allow you to wash my feet. And Jesus says something, and I want you to debate about this. Jesus answered him. He says, a person who has had a bath only needs to wash his feet, but his whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you. What does that mean? What does it mean to be clean versus unclean in Jesus' eyes? Because he's saying that Peter's clean, but there's somebody else there who's not clean. Talk about that in your small groups. Jesus is showing them something. He's showing them what he expects of them. Also, I want to call your attention, there's a disciple who's named the disciple whom Jesus loved. We believe that is the author of the book of John. It's actually John. He was so humble, he didn't want to name his own name, and he just used that phrase. Well, you know, the disciple whom Jesus loved was reclining next to him. As you go on, you'll see that Jesus says some really profound things. He says, you know, by this all men will know that you are mine, that you love one another. And what Jesus is saying to us is that as a church, the way in which we love each other will reflect him to the rest of the world. It's a huge responsibility on you and on me to love the people in our church. And finally, Jesus replied at the end, where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later. Jesus is talking about his martyrdom, the fact that he's going to die. And he's saying, you can't follow me right now, but there will come a day that you will follow me. And one of the things that you need to know is that historically, those disciples, just about every single one of them were martyred for the cause of Christ. And that's what Jesus is talking about there. But at the end of the day, I want you to ask this question in your group. What exactly is it that Jesus expects from those who follow him?